This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hello and welcome to the Washington Times Politically Unstable. I'm Kelly Sadler, the commentary editor. And today I am joined by no other than Judge Andrew Napolitano. You need no introduction, Judge. I know our audience is familiar by your weekly columns. They appear every Thursday in the paper. And today we're going to discuss kind of the safety versus mass surveillance when it comes down to these flock cameras and the usage of these flock cameras. I just became aware of these cameras. I did a little research, so I want to put some stats to introduce our audience to what these flock cameras are. Currently, they're being deployed by 7,000 primarily law enforcement agencies, your local cops, for example. They can track license plates 75 feet away. They can put together algorithms if they don't have a clear shot of the license plate to gather license plate numbers. They retain this information in a mass data storage system for about 30 days, which is accessible to any police officer on the force, depending on where you live in the United States of America. So far, 120,000 cameras have been installed nationwide, capturing about $20 billion license plate numbers a month. And so, Judge, law enforcement agencies and advocates say, and they swear by these cameras, calling them a crime-fighting star. I just can't help but think about, what if this information falls into the wrong hands?
Well, it already has fallen into the wrong. Kelly, good day to you. And it's always a pleasure to be with you, whether here in the other venue where we often work together. The information has fallen into the wrong hands. About 30 police officers have already been arrested for accessing the data for personal or nefarious purposes. But the problem, in my view, and you know this from what you've heard me say and from my column, is bigger than that. These flock cameras were never authorized by any city councils or state legislatures. They were just quietly acquired by police departments. And this is not just another crime-fighting tool. This radically alters the relationship, I suggest to you, between the individual and the state, because by capturing everything, by capturing the movements of people who are accused of no crime, accused of no wrongdoing, done nothing to invite public scrutiny, they have turned the Fourth Amendment on its head. The Fourth Amendment requires a search warrant in order to engage in surveillance. You present evidence to a judge, like I was in New Jersey. If the judge accepts the evidence as credible and as constituting probable cause of a crime, the judge signs the search warrant, and then the surveillance begins. This is the opposite. This is surveil first, mass surveillance. You just pointed out billions of surveillance, acts of surveillance. Surveil first and hope for evidence afterwards. That is 180 degrees from what the Fourth Amendment requires. This will radically change the relationship between government and individuals by making us totally subject to the whims of those in law enforcement without any intercession by the judicial branch.
Judge, there have been suits that have made its way through courts, and the court has ruled in favor of law enforcement, saying basically that if you are in a car using public roads, you have no right to privacy. I mean, what do you say to that argument?
Those findings, and there are many of them, and they go back a long way. Even when I was in law school a long time ago, we were all taught early on in the criminal procedure course, then the public, you have no right to privacy. That was before technology destroyed privacy beyond anybody's imagining at the time those decisions came down. Because the technology is extraordinary, Kelly. The first time the car is captured, the information is stored. The second time the car is captured, the camera doesn't even have to go to the license plate. It already knows from the mobile device in the pocketbook or the front seat of the driver who it is and what's there. And depending upon the nature of your mobile device, it can actually gather information from the mobile device, which you think is private and secret. None of that was available to the courts, to the prosecutors, or to the defense lawyers challenging the privacy in public at the time these cases were addressed. The most recent case by the Supreme Court goes the other way. It goes in the direction of privacy. This is a case called Chattree. It was just decided 2 months ago. In Chattree, Mr. Chattree was accused and eventually pleaded guilty of robbing a bank. In order to find him, the local police asked the local service providers for the identifying information of every cell phone that was near the bank at the time it was robbed. And they did this without a search warrant. Then they did it again. Then they got a retroactive search warrant. Then they gathered the information about who was there, and they failed to get a search warrant to access the information. So you have a couple steps here. One is the surveillance, and the other is the use of the data surveilled. You have a search warrant the first time, no search warrant the second time of the surveillance, and no search warrant to access the data to get Mr. Chattree's name. He pleads guilty to bank robbery and reserves the right to appeal. Supreme Court reversed his conviction and said they needed a search warrant to access the data. So the current Supreme Court, which has a conservative majority, but at times, thanks be to God, you'll know why I'm smiling because you know my thoughts, a libertarian bent when it comes to the Bill of Rights, said, you can't do this. Go get a search warrant. Go present evidence first and see if a judge agrees with you. So I think those cases you've referred to will soon pass away as historic relics.
Well, one thing that I find so troubling is the connectivity of these flock cameras to other data systems. Earlier this year, Ring was going to enter a partnership with Flock so that your home camera surveillance would link on to the Flock database, and cops would have access to entire neighborhoods worth of video. Ring, after public outrage, people were horrified at the violation of privacy, discontinued its association with Flock. So it never went through with that partnership. But these cameras can link to other databases, other technologies, other cameras to basically give you a 360 view of your street. There's been a big backlash against Flock cameras as a violation of privacy. There's been vandalism in many states of these cameras, of people outraged, people voicing their concerns online. But, ultimately that blows back on that individual. They are then prosecuted, and it's a federal crime to vandalize these cameras. And ultimately the city will put up a new camera where the old camera was torn down. So that's more of your taxpayer dollars wasted. What is the best way for concerned individuals in communities to take a stance against, Flock cameras? Because right now, they're proliferating across America.
Well, there's a certain amount of limited civil disobedience, which probably won't be prosecuted. I'll tell you a funny example in a minute. You may be familiar with it because it's gone viral. But the heart of this problem is state legislatures not doing their job. Their job is to protect our liberties as well as to protect our physical safety. And state legislatures should invalidate these things. In New Jersey, which is where I live, Governor Christie, when he was the governor of New Jersey, prohibited the use of these cameras. They weren't as sophisticated then when he was the governor as they are now. Prohibited the use of the cameras from automatically sending you traffic tickets. In New York City, where I work, you can get a traffic ticket and no human is involved. The computer takes the picture. The computer decides that you violated the law. The computer sends a message to an automatic mailing system. This thing shows up in the mail. I don't know what would happen if you challenged it because there's no human being that that observed this. In St. Petersburg, Florida, there's a viral video of two very, very seniors sitting at a park bench in front of a flock camera with a big sign saying, "Beware of flock." And when the cars come by, they raise the sign and the sign blocks the camera. Now, I don't know if that is interference with a government function sufficient to justify a prosecution, but they have been cheered on all across the country.
Well, I mean, we just saw this weekend, for example, sometimes these flock cameras get it wrong. There's human error, there's algorithm error. There was a couple that was detained. They were driving a silver SUV on I-94 in Wisconsin. The flock camera flagged their car as a potential manslaughter crime, somebody who committed murder. There was a chase on I-94. They were blocked in by police cars. They were held at gunpoint, told to get out of the car. And it was the wrong car, the wrong people. Basically, what happened is that after 30 days, an officer forgot to take down the information. The case had been resolved. These people were innocent. But this is just how innocent people can get ensnarled into this process that is based on algorithms, that does rely on officers taking down, updates or posts of who is wanted in the area after they expire. And human error can cause a lot of this. Less than 1% of the captions of the pictures that are taken of people in their cars are actually murderers or rapists or pedophiles or people who committed a crime. The vast majority of people are innocent bystanders. But Judge, what I'm also concerned about and what we've seen is the creep of these flock cameras from use on public roads to, let's say, being put out outside of gun ranges, outside of abortion clinics, on golf courses, in public gyms. This doesn't seem like a public safety hazard.
There's no legitimate law enforcement function being furthered by surveilling people going into abortion clinics or protesting outside of abortion clinics or going to gun ranges. This is just a lurid fascination with private behavior, in this case, probably ideologically driven one way or the other in the case of the abortion facilities and in the case of the gun ranges. The case that you just described, I'm not familiar with it, but they have a substantial cause of action against the police and against the cameras. I would imagine if it was a flock camera, again, not all the cameras are flock. We're just sort of using that word, which is a proper noun, not a common noun. We're using that word generically, but they would have a substantial cause of action against the camera manufacturer and against the police department for the false arrest. But that type of an arrest can be so terrifying and traumatizing. It doesn't end. The trauma and the terror doesn't end when the police acknowledge their mistake. It stays with you for a long time. The thought of a half dozen police officers pointing their guns at you for something you didn't do.
Now, what can be done? I feel like this is a case where our technology, our digital technology, has outpaced that of the law. Tim Burchett right now has legislation in the House of Representatives that would outlaw or ban local municipalities and police officers from using flock cameras. There's other pieces of legislation that would deny federal funding to states and localities that want to purchase these cameras to purchase these cameras with those monies. So if state monies want to be used in the purchase, they can. Uh, but where do we need, because this is my concern. During COVID-19, we saw the government shut down. People were arrested going on the beach surfing in California because they weren't abiding by the lockdowns. People didn't want to come out of their homes. If you didn't have a mask on, you had to have a vax card to go into certain restaurants here in Washington, D.C. I mean, imagine that with this mass surveillance system and the ability of police to make, if you're not following our rules, we see you and we can come and get you. So legislatively at the national level, what should be done? And then at the local level, I mean, you brought up these city councils aren't being consulted when these police departments want to purchase these cameras and install them. What should be done at a local level? Should we be going to our city councils and demanding them not approve this, or putting in some sort of protocol, or who has access to these cameras? That's the other thing that's very alerting to me, is because in many states, anybody has access to this database, and we've seen abuse by officers trying to look up their exes or track down information in lovers, squalls that has nothing to do with a official police investigation.
I mean, the only thing that will work is the enforcement of the Fourth Amendment. This can be done either judicially or legislatively, but it won't happen judicially until someone is charged with a crime and the government is foolish enough to use information obtained from one of these cameras as in the prosecution. Then that person has the standing to challenge its use. So if, for example, the Supreme Court of New Jersey were to say no information can be used from any of these cameras unless it was obtained pursuant to a search warrant, that would stop the cameras almost overnight. On the other hand, it might not stop all the cameras, but if the legislature of the state of New Jersey said no government funds, state, county, or local, can be used to purchase these cameras anywhere in New Jersey, sort of like Governor Christie's executive order, which is now about 12 or 15 years old, that would stop it as well. But it's going to require some political pressure. There shouldn't be political pressure. This is a very, very popular issue. The duty of the state legislatures is to protect our rights as well as to protect our bodies. They should welcome the opportunity to get rid of this nonsense.
One of the things that I find alarming or is polling on this issue, and this is amongst conservatives. Conservatives overwhelmingly want to back the blue and view these cameras as a positive because it's helping crack down on the worst of the worst. Also, ICE, the left is upset at this, but ICE could work with local law enforcement to track down illegal aliens and round them up for mass deportation, something that this administration supports and wants to have happen. And many of our readers support and want to make happen, getting the worst of the worst off our streets and making our neighborhoods safer. So when asked this question, do you support these cameras on our city streets? A majority of conservatives do. What do you make of that, and how can we inform the public of the potential of these cameras? Maybe the harms outweigh the good.
A lot of people take the view, Kelly, and I've heard this since I published the column which you ran, which, by the way, you edit for me, for which I am deeply grateful every week. Since the column came out late last night or yesterday afternoon, whenever you posted it, send me emails and texts saying, I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that is the standard invocation by the average middle American who has never had any involvement with law enforcement, has no criminal record, and has never been stopped. I wonder if the police, if the couple that were chased by the police, I think you said it was in Wisconsin.
I-94 in Wisconsin, yeah.
Right. I wonder if those people had the view, I've never done anything wrong. I have nothing to hide. You have your dignity to protect. There's a principle in physics. It has to do with molecules and atoms, but it applies to human beings. A thing under observation changes on account of its awareness of the observation. Our entire society will change to one of timidity and fear if we have reason to believe that everywhere we go and every place we visit and everything we say, no matter how innocent, lawful, and moral, is going to be surveilled by the government. That is not the government that the founders gave us. That is absolutely contrary to the purposes of the Fourth Amendment. And what happened to that couple in Wisconsin could happen to anyone. And it is terror that doesn't leave you. That's about the best answer that I can give. I mean, I know a lot of people in Congress, as you do, and a lot of people in state legislatures, particularly in New Jersey, my home state, and I would encourage them to ride the crest of the wave. This is a very popular issue. Legislation banning this stuff should pass in about a week.
All right. Judge Andrew Napolitano, thank you so much. And we will be monitoring this story because I think a lot of people are just becoming aware of it, realizing its potential implications. And we're seeing more and more of these cameras be put up in our neighborhoods. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Kelly. Always a pleasure. All the best.